Hey, what's going on? You know who it is. You know what it is. All right, you guys, peep game. So, all right, got a chance to listen to this interview that was conducted by the Art of Dialogue. Go subscribe to the channel or just check out the videos. It's called the Art of Dialogue. Real good channel. Very informative. Real in-depth interviews. With different people. So, he basically does what the other guy does. I don't want to say his name. I don't want to give him no free publicity, but he does long, lengthy interviews, and then he breaks them off into segments. So one of the interviews that he recently did was Caroll, and he was the first officer on the scene the night that Tupac was fatally shot in Las Vegas. Now, you guys know I've did videos on the location where Tupac was fatally shot in Las Vegas. I did a couple of videos there. That's a real busy street too. A lot of traffic flows through that street, and it's just amazing based off how much traffic flows through that street. Yeah, that somebody was brave enough to, basically do what they did. Now, for all intents and purposes, just to end the whole discussion, the mystery about who did it and who was behind it and everything. Pretty much the Las Vegas Police Department has identified Orlando Anderson as the shooter. They pretty much have came to the conclusion he was the shooter. He did it, and that was it. That's all. Now, keep in mind, he was later basically deleted, like maybe a year later. I think in Los Angeles somewhere, or at least in the Los Angeles area. Orlando Anderson was a well-known Crip, and he was, a shooter. He was, about that action. But nevertheless, he was involved in an accident, or basically he was jumped, and the MGM Grand, the night of a Mike Tyson fight, and basically things escalated to when outside somewhere in that area they had came from a club, and basically to make a long story short, he saw him at the light, and whether he was in a vehicle or whether he was on foot, he pulled up there and he basically let off a lot of rounds. Tupac was fatally hit multiple times. Suge Knight was shot on the side of the head, but the bullet fragments didn't, go deep into his head. But nevertheless, with that being said, he basically, this guy, he basically said some things, and basically sort of like closed the door on a lot of speculation about who was involved, who might have not been involved, and what's his take of the whole situation. Now, he basically said that it's highly unlikely that Diddy was involved. And he said even if he was, he said it would be very hard to prove it. He said unless, Diddy basically came down there and basically confessed to him that he played a role in it, which there's no reason for him to basically do that. And then as far as Keefe D goes, he said, well, he said Keefe D, on one point, he can be looked upon and possibly, be investigated. But he say based off how long ago it was, and they didn't have all this technology they had with it, advanced DNA technology and, cameras at the lights, with microphones and all that stuff, which you've been hearing that some of those cameras have microphones, which that's a totally different issue about whether your privacy is being invaded. But that's another video for another day. And then now, as time goes on, you're going to start to see more and more AI technology used, which that could be a plus or a minus. So, you know, but you got to understand things was different 20 something years ago than what it was now. Probably if that had happened like now, if that had happened like as early as like, man, probably 5 years ago, it would have been easy to probably, make arrest and close the case and trial and convict people. But back then, things was still a little, things was a lot different then. So, but anyway, he said some light on a lot of things. He pretty much said Tupac was out of there, in the car. And then you was hearing all these rumors that Tupac was in the hospital room, talking and all this kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden he went into a coma, and then his mother eventually ended up pulling the plug on him. His father, Billy Garland, basically confirmed that was not true. He said that was not accurate. He said basically Tupac, from the moment he got into the hospital, they said that he had tubes in him, in his stomach, and basically that was not true. Because you heard people say, well, I visited Tupac and he was talking and all that stuff. So I'm not going to say the people's names who said they visited him and he was talking and all that stuff, because I don't even want that to turn into another story. Maybe they envisioned or whatever the case may be, but his biological father confirmed it. And then basically this policeman, this cop who was a sergeant at the time, I guess he was one of the dudes that tried to investigate what happened. He was part of the bike patrol, but he was a sergeant at the time, but he retired, basically a lieutenant. So you thinking he got to be like probably in his mid 60s or something, or at the worst case, late 50s, because that was just a while ago. If he came in fresh, came in at age 20 and a half and stuff, because you can apply for the academy as early as 20 and a half, because you go through, I think, 6 months of training. So, all that stuff. But so by the time you finish, but nevertheless, he just shed some light on a lot of different things. He said Tupac's bodily injuries were so severe, say it's just highly unlikely that he would have been able to survive. He said basically Tupac pretty much went unconscious as he was placed in the ambulance, because it took them at least a while to get there because of all the traffic and everything. So, and he just said due to the severity of how bad his wounds were, because they said when the basically when the bullets hit him, they punctured his lungs, and basically he was basically choking on his own blood, and which would cause him not to be able to breathe, because sometimes, depending on where you hit, you can end up choking on your own blood. So that's what they mean by the internal injuries can hurt you. That's why you've seen on movies and stuff where they say, hey, well, we got to get the blood. The blood is starting to, clog up this, clog up that. And, that's why you see in movies where they say, okay, well, you need to stick a hole right here. So, that kind of stuff. I don't want to go deep into that. But he is saying that it's highly unlikely that Tupac was breathing and talking like you heard a few artists and rappers and people say that they visit him. And I don't want to say that they're lying and everything, but like I said, maybe it's a figment of their imagination, and that they envisioned it, or they thought that was going on. And maybe that's what they were trying to say. I had a vision and it felt like he was talking to me because I was so distraught over what happened to him. But like I said before, it's a real good interview. You guys should check it out. This guy, he shed some light on a lot of different things. And he spoke once again in depth on the whole Keefe D situation. And he basically said that Keefe D could just be clout chasing, where he could be telling the truth, but he's saying basically, let's just say he is taken into court. He could just sit up there and say, oh man, I was lying. I was just, doing this just for, attention. Because based off the fact they have just his word, they need more physical evidence. So anyway, if you get a chance, check it out. It's your boy Town. I'm out.